are many variables throughout the entire screen printing process. And often you're trying to fix a variable and you might be actually working on the wrong one. And one of the most important variables that is often overlooked is actually looking at the screen tension of a screen. Now, the screen tension is extremely important because it is what is going to determine how well we're going to hold registration from screen to screen or color to color within a job. Now, not only will a screen with a low amount of tension have problems when it comes to registration, it can also have problems when it comes to actually sticking to the product because it is the mesh is essentially baggy, and when the actual squeegee is being pulled through it, it's kind of just sitting onto the shirt and then it's sticking to it and so forth. So making sure that the actual screen has the proper tension is extremely important. Now, most shops are going to purchase what is called a stretch and glue frame. The reason are they're cheaper, they're very common. I just highly suggest don't go after the wood ones because they will warp and you will have tons of problems. Now, when it comes to measuring a frame, you are going to use what is called a stretch tension meter. Now, in order to make sure that the stretch tension meter is working properly, we must first place it on the glass and essentially calibrate it, make sure that it's set to 0. Now, realize that a screen tension meter often has to be sent back to the manufacturer for it to be recalculated. A big thing when it comes to these meters themselves, a screen tension meter like this is $500. And you know, it seems like a lot of money for something very small, but it is extremely important to a shop success. If you're going to be printing a lot of multicolor jobs and you can't check the tension of a screen and kind of determine where a problem might be, you're going to have bigger problems in your hand than just a $500 device. If you're a larger shop and can't afford it, it's a good idea to actually have a couple of these. If you have two, you can then kind of calibrate or essentially compare the two readings to one another. And then when you actually need to get one recalibrated and you send it off to the manufacturer, you still have one in your shop and you're not down a tension meter. Now, when it comes to reading the tension of a screen, you need to be on a flat surface, and what you're going to do is you're going to take the tension meter and you're going to place it in the middle of the screen. Now, the screen itself has two different ways that it's going. It's the long ways and the short ways, which is essentially warp and weft. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put the meter right in the middle, and we're going to see how many newtons of tension essentially is going in this direction. Once we find that, we then want to move it and see what the tension is going the other direction. Again, we're only really measuring it from the center of the screen, and it's all going to be measured in newtons. Now, with the stretch and glue screen, it is important to know that we're just checking the actual tension. There is nothing we can actually do to increase it. A stretch and glue frame, it's a very important, whoever actually did stretch the screen did so properly. Each mesh count is supposed to be stretched to a specific amount of tension, and within more of just the mesh count, there's even different weaves of the mesh, and even those can change the amount of tension that are supposed to be in a screen itself. But what's always going to be better is more tension typically is going to be way better than too low of tension. And when you buy brand new screens, you expect them to have the correct amount of tension. Don't assume that. A lot of suppliers of screens, whether they're stretch and glue, wood or aluminum, they often do not take the time to make sure that they are properly stretched with the right amount of tension, and that's when you need to be asking for your money back. So having a tension meter to check the manufacturer's work or just the supplier's work can be very handy because again, you can't always trust that they're doing their job as well as they need to. One way to get around it is to actually purchase what is called a Neumann roller frame. Another common type or brand is a diamond chase frame. Now, these types of frames do not use glue. That's why they're not called a stretch and glue. Instead, this frame uses locking strips. A diamond chase will actually have a ton of little screws that can be undone so that this mesh can be pulled and tightened when necessary. The nice thing about a Neumann frame though is because of those locking strips, we can actually retension the screen at any time. And just like on a stretch and glue, we're going to put our tension meter gauge in the middle, read the tension one way, and then the other. Again, the warp and the width direction of the screen both need to be measured. And then whenever you're measuring the actual screen, you need to be recording it on the frame itself. And so on a stretch and glue, you're going to write it down, and there's nothing you can do to change it. On a Neumann roller frame though, you can write it down and date it and then see where it was, and then maybe you remeasure it a month later after it's had a handful of jobs and see where it's at. Now, it's not uncommon for Neumann roller frames, once it's actually been stretched the first time, then it's coated and actually printed with. Typically you want to often check the tension one more time, maybe tighten it, and then it's going to be good for the lifetime. Again, screen tension is just one of many variables throughout the entire printing process, and a lot of beginning printers just don't think about it. They think a screen one straight out the box is not going to have many problems, and that's not always the case. But it's really going to hinder how successful you are on the actual press. If you have any questions about how to measure screen tension or anything else related to the screen printing industry, please do not hesitate contacting us. Thank you.